Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, a smaller breakout session. My name is Amber Wason. I'm with Drop Mobility, and I'm joined by Dr. Cassandra Little, who is the CEO of the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce, and also in charge of a really cool project in Fresno. If you're not familiar with Drop, we enable cities and municipalities and campuses to bring their own bike share systems. We are an end-to-end solutions provider, so we do everything from hardware to software to lobbying to community outreach to actual operations of the bike share system. So I'm here today to talk a bit about branding. What's pretty unique about Drop is that we white label all of our bike share systems. So you'll never see a bike share system that we are part of that's called Drop. They're all locally branded. So today I want to talk briefly about kind of what's in a name and how we go about the branding process and things to think about. And then we have a live case study with Dr. Little here, who we are actually in the process of branding their bike share system in Fresno. So we'll talk a bit about what that process has been like. And then finally, we have a really cool interactive project here that we'd love your collaboration with. And so we brought one of our old bike frames from Dayton, Ohio, and it's no longer being used. And so we would like to repurpose this bike and make it really fun and interactive. So we've brought some stickers and decals and markers and tape, and really you guys can do whatever you want to this frame. So come have some fun. We'll get it started here, and then it will be at our booth in the exhibit hall in booth 5 for the rest of the day. So you can come by with friends, check it out, see what it looks like. So just to get started really quick, this is a short presentation. I'm not going to get too in-depth about branding itself, but quickly just to all be on the same page in terms of what is a brand. Your brand is really your identity, right? So when we talk about branding a bike share system, we're bringing it to life. It's like, when you have a kid and you name it, like you're giving it an identity. It will someday have a reputation. And it's about representing who you are, but also who you aspire to be. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as you're naming a company or a system. And so when we talk about locally branded systems and why we believe that white labeling and locally branding systems is so important, there's a few kind of high-level reasons. So one, as we all know, some communities can have objections when you're first bringing micromobility to a community. And so by involving the community in the very beginning around branding and bringing the system to life, you can really help overcome some of those objections. It helps build cohesion, so bringing, again, many stakeholders from the community together to start to bring together this project and have more input and involvement from many stakeholders. And then if you do it really well, there's a sense of community pride that comes with a bike share system. So I live in Washington, D.C. It's Capital Bike Share. We, call it Cabby. There's a lot of affinity. When Lyft took over operations of Capital Bike Share, no one cares. It's Cabby, right? It's our bike share system. It's belongs to us. So I think that's really important. In terms of the branding process, we'll get into this a little bit in talking with Dr. Little today. But it starts with identifying who the key stakeholders are. So in many of our systems that will involve a local transit authority or maybe a nonprofit operator. Many times the city's involved, maybe there's a title sponsor, and then of course we're in the picture. So we all come together, and it starts really with these planning calls and getting all the key stakeholders in the room and identifying who's going to do what. We use experience to guide the direction. So in Fresno, they have brought in a really experienced branding person to help the process. We have experience that we lend in the process. So having someone to guide the process is so important. And then, of course, you're going to get input and ideas from the community. You'll generate different options. And then you'll get community feedback. And the reason I kind of highlight this using the experience, you'll see my little quote at the end, design by committee doesn't work. So while it's really important to get input, there has to be some sort of cohesive process or you'll end up with a bike like we're going to end up with at the end of the day that's really fun and colorful but doesn't really tell a cohesive message. So a few things to consider for a bike share system or a microtransit that you might not consider in branding something else. So the artwork has to fit on the bike, and that might seem really obvious, but we're branding a system in Eagle County, Colorado right now, and they did a really cool brand before we started on the project. But the brand was all sort of on different angles, so they had sort of shift going up to the right and then rides coming to the down, and it was a beautiful logo, but just didn't fit on the bike. So we had to work with them to sort of, tailor that logo to fit on the bike. Finding smaller versions of the logo, so something that will still distill down to a mark that you can easily have in the App Store. Something verbal is always really fun. So Dr. Little will talk more about some ideas that they have, but one of them is valley ride. So let's, valley ride there. You can kind of use it as a verb, and it's just kind of easy to roll off the tongue. Something that translates easily into a domain, something to think about. You have to point people here. Something that's descriptive and searchable in the ride store. So the word bike and ride are sometimes pretty difficult to find in the App Store. So finding something that is a bit more descriptive. And then, of course, if you do it really well, there's some sort of nod to the city or the market. So what's unique about the place that you live? What do you identify with? And so Dr. Little and I were talking about that this morning. One of our other systems in Southern California, we had actually proposed the name Valley to, and not being from there, it was in the San Bernardino Valley. We thought it was a great name, but they didn't identify with being in the Valley. And Dr. Little explained to me today, they're in Central Valley, California, and that is the Valley. So they really identify with that. So something that gives a local nod to the market is super important. So a few quick case studies. This is our system. We operate in New Orleans. This is Blue Bikes. NOLA, that it came together. It was a partnership between a local nonprofit operator, the City of New Orleans, and then, of course, Blue Cross Blue Shield. We all came together, and, of course, they're a title sponsor, so it's a big part of the name and the identity of the system. In Kansas City, there was an existing transit brand. Even though there's many different entities and authorities collaborating on these projects, whether it's the streetcar or the bus or the bike share system, everything is called Ride KC. So we were able to integrate into that brand and really tell a cohesive message about their kind of transit system. So I mentioned Shift Rides before. This is in Eagle County. We're launching the system very soon, actually. And this was a really cool project where 3 different communities came together to do a regional bike share system. And so we've been planning across the past few months and bringing together these communities, bringing together other stakeholders to come up with a brand. And I already told the story of how we translated their brand to fit on the bike and to be more accessible to the bike sharing community. And then finally wanted to turn the microphone over to Dr. Little to speak a bit about the process. And so just to catch you guys up, so this is a project that is under the Clean Shared Mobility Network. So there is an umbrella brand that they're in the process of branding. And then our next step will be to take that umbrella brand and to distill it down to a bike share brand. So Dr. Little has done an amazing job with community outreach, and so I just wanted you to speak a little bit about the process so far and how you've engaged with the community to build cohesion and start to get them in the process.
Sure. First of all, good morning. I'm trying to wake up here. I've had 4 cups of coffee, so we'll see how that works. So the thing about the branding, I'm also a storyteller. In my real life, I'm a creative, I'm a poet. So for me, branding does that. It tells a story, right? And it's fun. And so one of the things that we've done in regards to starting with even the beginning process of deciding on a logo and the colors, I wanted, I run a chamber where we're running this project out of, and I didn't want the chamber to have I didn't want the project to have the identity of the chamber. I wanted the project to have the identity of the community. So I didn't want to use the same color palette. For those of you who are in the marketing and design, all that, I had no clue. This is stuff I've learned from the person I hired to do the marketing. And so we put a lot of that out to the community. It was part of our community engagement plan, is to have the community fully involved in that process. Once we came up with all the colors and the logos, the team came up with like I told Amber, like 8 logos. I was like, this is going to go on forever. I will not put 8 logos out for community members to, vote on. So for me, the role is, as the lead, is I guide that process. I also have a project manager who watches each task. But sometimes, and especially in this part where we can get bogged down in regards to the branding and marketing, I think I've been more engaged at this process than I have, through the whole program, and mainly because I just wanted that process streamlined, and I want the community to be fully engaged in it. And so we've identified. So for me, looking at the project at a higher level, I was like, I have to get someone in here who knows what they're doing. So I hired someone to do the marketing. The hard part is that wasn't part of our budget. So I'm kind of taking that out of our chamber budget, but it was something that needed to happen because I want this project to be successful. And he's come on and it's just moved smooth. And he's the one that works with Drop in regards to what's going to be on the bikes and how it's going to be marketed and branding it. So we put out our logos. We put out two logos. We broke it down to 2. And then the community that we've been engaging with, we have community meetings. We have weekly team meetings, and we have monthly community meetings. And then the community voted on the 2 logos that they wanted.
I just wanted to back up and highlight something she said about, so a lot of times when we're working in these projects, there are grants and requirements or budgetary constraints around marketing. And Dr. Little was telling me this morning that for their project, it was very late on the schedule when branding and community outreach was included in what they could bill for. And so as she mentioned, they've actually found their own budget to start that process even sooner because she understands the importance of the community outreach component and building cohesion. And we were talking about, like, how do you have this whole project that you get off the ground and then at the very last minute you do community outreach and try to involve them, right? Like, how does that work if the project is already off the ground? It's kind of too late to feel like you're building cohesion and getting true input. So I thought that was pretty remarkable, and they've just done a fantastic job, regular community meetings, making people really feel like, people in Fresno, this is their project, this is their bike share system, which is really cool.
And the other part of that is having, another thing we've hired that wasn't fully in our budget, we hired a community-based organization, and she'll be in our panel later today, to handle a lot of the community engagement and to hold us accountable for that process. And so she's also a big part of the marketing and branding, and not just go bring community members to the meeting. So she's at the table. I'm a true believer that if everyone that's involved and that's going to be impacted need to be at the table, and so that actually has helped us move the project along, having her fully engaged in the branding of this project.
Does anyone have any questions or maybe stories to tell from your own communities about the branding process?
Everybody's like, no.
Cool. Well, this was supposed to be a really fun and interactive session, so if no one has any questions, we can end here, and then I would love to invite people to come up and help decorate this bike. Sound good?